This failure to address the problem is not some kind of mistake. There's a structural issue, and until we start talking about the underlying economic system, then we're going to continue to make that challenge
Dito, kita dito.
Thanks for watching episode 3 of All About the Planet, a series looking at the forces undermining meaningful action on climate change. We have 2 upcoming episodes to consider, one on plastic waste and one on urbanisation, which we'll be releasing in the weeks to come. So if you'd like to follow along, use the hashtag All About the Planet. Otherwise, check out aljazeera.com. Hello and welcome to the conversation.
This week we asked, what is growth?
A new economic model that enhances ecological conditions and ensures that everyone has enough to live well.
And we explore how degrowth compares to other models looking to restructure our economies for a more environmentally sustainable future.
For many of us, economic growth should bring about social and environmental well-being. I'm Dan Marino in San Francisco.
And I'm Joe Ware in London. You're listening to the Conversation Weekly, the world explained by experts.
This is the opportunity for the world to try to stop climate change getting out of control.
As world leaders and negotiators prepare to meet in Glasgow for the UN Climate Summit next week, debates are swirling around emissions targets, net zero pledges, and about money to adapt to climate change.
Many of the proposed solutions limit global average temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels through technology and renewables. At the heart of this is the concept of green growth, continuing to just grow the economy and produce more stuff in general, but using renewable resources and efficient ways to produce those.
But some economists have long argued that to really save our planet and ourselves, we need a fundamental overhaul of our economy.
The issue is one of economic growth, how it's measured, how it preoccupies the minds of politicians, and what it means for citizens in the environment.
There are many proposed solutions, and one that's been gaining traction is the degrowth movement. In this episode, we talked to 3 experts to help explain what degrowth is and what kind of attention this idea is getting today.
We decided to dedicate our whole episode to degrowth, so before we get into talking about the specifics, let's start with the problem.
We live today in a market-based economy where at 3% growth, an economy doubles every 23 years.
This is Sam Alexander.
I'm a lecturer and researcher at the University of Melbourne in Australia. And over the last 10 years, I've been teaching at Melbourne Uni a course called Consumerism and the Growth Economy.
Sam's research basically focuses on the problems that come from the world's preoccupation with economic growth. With that, he says, come a lot of assumptions about money.
Now, money allows us to buy many of the things that we need to satisfy our most pressing desires. You know, nice carpet and big houses and flash cars and exotic travel and so on and so forth.
When we buy and consume things, the money we spend can be taxed. Governments like taxes, governments like money, so they like it when economies grow.
Governments want more money through economic growth that they can fund important social services, schools, better hospitals, military, building roads and infrastructures, social services, unemployment benefit, as well as perhaps we could say even funding environmental programs.
The problem, Sam says, is that economic growth comes with a big cost.
We're now entering a phase that over the last 300 years of industrial development, we are, as a human species, changing Earth systems, the climate system in particular. We are deforesting the planet, we're emptying the oceans, we're destroying topsoils, we're over-consuming renewable resources, we have over-reliance on non-renewable resources. So this economic expansion of the human economic footprint on planet Earth has led to a gross ecological overshoot, and our conception of progress still remains almost exclusively growth orientated. The best science is suggesting that we are in a state of ecological overshoot and have been for some time. And there are various frameworks with which scientists have tried to do this. One is the ecological footprint analysis, which recently published its report suggesting that we would need 1.7 planets if we were to continue the existing planet going into the deep future.
And that's not including growth, that's just as of today.
As of today, the existing economy.
It's this critique that inspired some philosophers to come together to question the pursuit of growth itself and argue for alternatives.
There is a developing degrowth movement which says we need to rethink the fundamentals of this growth-oriented trajectory. And it's come up with this term degrowth, which was coined in the early 70s. And it basically means a new societal or economic model based on planned contraction of the energy and resource demands of our economy. In a way that enhances ecological conditions and ensures that everyone has enough to live well, both human and non-human.
Sam told me that today, economists in the degrowth movement are far from the only ones concerned about the environmental toll of the world's economic systems.
But the mainstream response to the environmental predicament is to not question the growth economy, but to try to grow in a green way.
The argument here is that it's possible to disentangle economic growth from negative environmental impacts. We do this by shifting away from fossil fuels and intense resource extraction. This is known as decoupling, and there are some big proponents of this idea. It's the main theory that underpins the Green New Deal in the US, and more generally, just the idea of green growth.
In theory, this is coherent because we know that, for example, we could produce our goods and services in less energy and material intensive ways. If I were a car manufacturer, I could, through design and innovation, discover how to make that same car with 10% less materials. So I could provide cars to my community, but with less material impact. The problem is that, let's say I reduce my steel demands for the car by 10%, but I sell 20% more cars. I've efficiently produced the car, or more efficiently produced the car, but the actual material and energy demands of car manufacture have gone up because I'm selling more cars.
This is where the degrowth model really branches off from green growth.
It's distinguished from the green growth model by suggesting that we're not going to be able to shrink the human material and energy footprint in a sustainable way through the application of technological innovation and market mechanisms alone. So degrowth, it's not an anti-technological position, it advocates for appropriate technology and constrained market activity, but it's of the view that technology and markets alone will not be able to resolve the ecological predicament in a way that is also socially just and can lead to flourishing lives for us all.
So what might degrowth actually look like for people living in the world's richest countries, for example?
It's going to involve less driving and more walking and more cycling and more use of public transport. It might be a rethinking of our diets. We might have smaller houses. We may well be travelling less globally because it's very hard to fly a passenger plane on renewable energy, at the moment at least. Essentially, all aspects of our lives, energy, housing, food, socialising, consumption, clothing, all these different aspects are going to require fundamental rethink.
But not all economists who are critical of growth and skeptical that it can be actually decoupled from the negative impacts on the environment and also society are sold on the idea of degrowth.
Yeah, that's right, Dan. And I spoke to one of them, Lorenzo Fioramonti, a professor of political economy at the University of Pretoria in South Africa.
I'm also a research fellow at the Center for Social Investment of the University of Heidelberg in Germany, a research associate with the University of the United Nations. But over the past 3 years, I've been doing something different. I became a member of parliament in Italy.
Lorenzo is part of another group of academics and thinkers who call themselves post-growth economists. He appreciates the contributions made by the degrowth movement, but he worries that the measures it's
Milky, better cholesterol free.
Beato nasceu num... I have a younger sister, she's 12. I was 12 when my mother gave birth to her, so I know what it is like to...
Do you want to have kids? If so, when and how many? It's a big decision. They may be small bundles of joy, but they can cost a fortune. As people weigh up the pros and cons of procreating, fewer children are being born, especially in a rich world. And in the long term, this can mean fewer young workers to support the elderly. So, is it worth having kids?
I went back and forth a lot in the beginning. A lot of thought that went into weighing the options of both having kids and not having kids.
Jessica and her husband Andre live in Houston, Texas, with their 2-year-old son, Michael.
The day he was born, I was overcome with a lot of emotion, happiness, just joy. It's crazy.
Abot kaya ng all-in-one senior nutritional drink para suportahan ang katawan sa pagtanda.
So having children makes people happy, right? In the short term, yes. But in the long term, not necessarily. According to academics, it's likely Jessica was experiencing what's known as a happiness bump. Mothers' happiness levels rise in the years leading up to giving birth, but that's where they peak. And within a few years return to the level they were before the kid was born.
We've been studying men and women in couples, with and without children, and we see that the levels of happiness and life satisfaction, mental health and loneliness are quite similar. That's quite consistent across
you're eating a lot.
different
Dapat you listen and obey a lot too, okay?
Some factors do affect people's happiness, such as their income and whether they are single parents. Parents in countries with stronger welfare systems also report higher levels of happiness. But all in all, there isn't much difference between the life satisfaction of parents and people without kids.
While there might be moments during the day that are filled with happiness, the more typical experience is that being together with the children can be quite stressful. It also takes up much of your time and energy. It brings with it a lot of worries.
Let's do Downward Facing Dog together, ready? I thought motherhood would be, you see all the stuff in the movies. I really thought that it would be this beautiful time where you'd have a great relationship with your kids, but also, a little bit of hard work too that I don't think I understood before we decided to have Michael.
About 80% of parents in America say parenting is enjoyable, but almost 30% also admit it's stressful all or most of the time. If children won't make you happy, why have them? For most of history, people had lots of children, which made financial sense because kids could work in the fields and look after their parents in old age. But as societies have grown richer, there has been a reduction in procreation.
We've seen a change in why people have children and the economic incentives to having children. So as we have more countries offering pensions, older adults are less reliant on their adult children to provide for them in their older years. And at the same time, we see more women getting higher levels of education, being employed. We also see a change in attitude, a move toward secularization, the less importance of religion, a rise in feminism, a rise in women's rights, and childhood extends because we need to educate our children longer. So the costs of raising children go up.
And kids can be costly. The cost starts even before birth. Fertility treatment for those who need it is expensive. And in some countries, giving birth in a hospital can cost thousands of dollars. Then there's food, clothes, nappies, toys, baby carriers, and prams. The Economist has calculated that a typical American family can expect to spend almost $300,000 raising a child to the age of 17. Factor in college tuition, and it rises to over $400,000. For Jessica and Andre in Houston, those costs are about to go up even more. They're expecting their second child.
The financial implications are big. Children are expensive. I mean, there's less stuff to buy, just because we already have, a car seat and all that stuff for Michael. We are saving for education and all that stuff for 2 kids instead of 1.
The strain on Jessica's and Andre's budget is not helped by the fact that America is the only rich country that doesn't have nationwide statutory paid parental leave. Instead, federal policy is just 12 weeks of unpaid leave. But there are so many restrictions, only 56% of workers are eligible, and many feel they can't afford to sacrifice their salary for this long.
At the time when Michael was born, I was the primary breadwinner for our family. I did not get paid maternity leave. That definitely played a role in terms of deciding how long of a maternity leave to take. And after 2 months, I went back to work full time. It was definitely hard leaving Michael after 2 months, just because that's around the time when kids start to become a little bit more interactive. Babies start to smile, so I almost felt like I was missing out on something by going back to work so soon.
Statutory parental leave in rich countries varies greatly. In Japan, parents are given about a year of paid parental leave each, of which half is paid with about 2/3 of their normal salary. In Finland, parents are given about 14 months of paid leave to share. They're also entitled to take further childcare leave up until their child is 3. In Britain, a mother's job is guaranteed for a year, but only 6 weeks are paid at almost full salary. A further 33 weeks are paid, but at a much lower level. It means Britain has one of the least generous leave policies in Europe, which can make it harder for some Brits to balance their budgets.
What do you like to mix them into pancakes? Chocolate.
Faye lives in the south of England with her husband Matt.
You're gonna
Can you do it with me?
Cute manusia. Papakarga na.
I took 12 months maternity leave, so the last 3 months
Tapi ni mama.
were unpaid, unfortunately. And it was something that we sat down and worked out that we could achieve financially, with my husband doing extra overtime. Even before those final 3 months, there isn't a huge amount of paid maternity leave. We just had to be financially very conscious of what we were spending. Yeah, you can still find all the extra bits first.
And those challenges don't end when the parent goes back to work.
When we were looking at our finances, we didn't really factor in nursery costs. When we then looked at childcare costs, it was huge. Some months she was going 2 days a week, and some months it was more than our mortgage. The costs are sometimes crippling.
In 6 OECD countries, couples earning the average wage spend about 20% of their salary on childcare. Britain has the joint second most expensive childcare in the world.
We have thought about having another child. Unfortunately, the cost side of things does have a big impact. I could give up work, but I don't want to rely on benefits or income support. We want to be self-sufficient. If that means not having another child because of the financial implications, it's upsetting.
Hi, hello. Thank you for watching.
It's not just in
Thank you
Britain.
for watching.
A survey of young American adults found that of those who said they have or expect to have fewer children than they'd like, 64% cited childcare costs as a reason.
Hi, I'm Anna, and I direct this film. If you're enjoying watching it, you might be interested to know that Economist subscribers get access to a wealth of global analysis on every conceivable topic. You can read it, you can listen to it, and even be part of it at live webinars. For the best deal on a subscription, click on the link. And now on with the film.
It's not just the direct costs. Having kids can also affect how much mothers earn. Most parents experience a loss in take-home pay when they take parental leave. Men in heterosexual relationships experience a very small short-term dip, but for women the dip is much bigger and their earnings rarely recover. This is known as the motherhood penalty. Jolie Briley is the founder of the British charity Pregnant Then Screwed.
The motherhood penalty is the pay differential between mothers and other types of employees. It's essentially appropriation pay gap. When you have a baby, the way that our parental leave system functions, that encourages women to take long periods of time out of the workforce, it doesn't encourage men to do the same. In most heterosexual couples, the father will earn the most money. So when women look to return to work, they look at the cost of childcare and they compare it to their own salary. And in most cases, it doesn't add up. They then start to make career sacrifices. They look to return part-time, if at all, or they change jobs to something that's more suitable so that they can continue to do the lion's share of the caring and the unpaid labour. And so all of this starts to hack away at their income and their career progression.
In Britain, mothers are 3 times more likely to work part-time than fathers. Following the pandemic, the shift to remote working has made it easier for some parents to work more flexibly, but not all jobs allow this.
My work are very flexible, but it's a juggle, and at times just trying to work out my working pattern to be able to make it worthwhile me actually working and financially contributing to the house. I work office hours, my husband does shift work. I'm only 3 hours off full time, so really technically I am a part-time worker. It's the most amount that I can work that I then don't have to spend all of it on childcare.
Motherhood penalties vary across the world. One study looks at motherhood penalties in 6 rich countries. It finds that Germany, a country where a lot of women work part-time, had the worst penalty with a 61% drop in long-run earnings, while Denmark and Sweden have the smallest, but still sizable penalties. That's partly because Scandinavian countries have longer and better paid paternity leave.
We've seen as a result of that in Sweden that many more dads are taking time out of the workplace to care for their children. And as a result of that, we've seen that the gender pay gap is much smaller, the share of the unpaid labour is far more equal.
Over the last 50 or 60 years, we've seen big changes in gender dynamics, and in countries where we've seen that men have become more equal partners with women in raising kids, we see that fertility rates are actually higher than in similar countries where men aren't contributing as much to child rearing and housework.
Take Japan, where women spend far more time on household chores and childcare than men do, making it much harder for women to have a career and raise children, despite having some of the most generous maternity and paternity leave on the planet, which might explain why Japan has one of the lowest fertility rates in the world. In nearly all rich industrialized countries, fertility rates have fallen below 2.1 children per woman, the rate needed to maintain a stable population. And on a macroeconomic level, that can cause problems.
So if fertility falls low enough, then there are potentially not enough workers in the next generation. In the long term, it means a change in the labor force, how many workers are available, how much money those workers are paying into pension programs in particular. Most industrialized countries are pretty far from that level, although there are a few that have seen really dramatic reductions in fertility.
More open immigration policies could help, but few countries seem willing to consider them. So falling birth rates can cause economic disruption should governments intervene.
You want to be careful that governments aren't doing things that are coercive or that unduly restrict people's freedom to have the kind of families and the number of children that they want. Well, there is a role for government for supporting families with children, and in many countries there's certainly a lot more room for investment from the public sector. But it's not just about the economics, although that's part of it, but it's also about cultural ideals, it's about the influence of religion, and it's about the compatibility of motherhood and careers, and it's about gender dynamics.
Choosing to have children is a big decision, governed by deep emotions as well as practicalities. More generous parental leave, cheaper childcare, and flexibility at work might make the decision a bit easier. But despite the challenges
Thank you very much.
those who do choose to have babies rarely regret it.
Thank you po. Carl, dito ka na lang.
Struggle.
Sir, thank you.
Redefining your own image to yourself, but yeah, at the end of the day, life is just full of new person in your family.
The hardest thing you can ever do become a parent, and it's the most rewarding you've never experienced. It's extreme levels of joy and happiness and elation and pride as I have since I've had children.
Economic and social analysis. Click on the link. Thanks so much for watching.
Salamat po sa na ulam. Mabait na kapitbahay.
From the people picking up millions of pounds of cash a day, to the cleaners who scrub the 9/11 memorial in the dark,
Bibi ka,
and the
smile.
bagel makers who start rolling at 3 a.m.
1, 2, 3.
Yet some of the
1, 2, 3.
who keep America's busy and moving.
Hindi pa tapos, hindi pa tapos. 1, 2, 3.
Utopia Bagels makes 15,000 bagels a day
Ang
by
tagal.
hand.
Okay, iyon na.
It all starts with a 41-year-old dough recipe that uses brown milk.
It's a really old school way of doing a bagel. Most stores that make bagels today use brown
Salam.
sugar.
Tanggalin ko po yung sili kasi ano magaling
You
magsili.
need this ingredient.
Next, they add salt and a large scoop of breakfast baby sugar.
So what that does, it softens the dough inside and it crisps the crust outside.
Then they start filling the mixer with New York City tap water, but it has to be at just the right temperature.
We tend to use water that's around 60 degrees, 62, 63, but temperatures of the water may change when it's hotter and colder throughout the year.
Then it's time to add in 200 pounds of all-purpose flour, a small portion compared to what they have in mind.
You're looking at about 7,000 pounds of flour.
Yes po, sir.
The amount for us to go through all this flour, and this is actually just
Ano
one
pa?
amount of flour.
The final ingredient is yeast. But for flavored bagels, the recipe may change slightly.
Yes lang kayo diyan?
Sugar,
Wala nang pa-cash out
freeze
mo.
dried ingredients, depending on the flavor. There is no set time for when the dough is finished mixing. According to Scott, it takes a keen eye and ears to experience.
It's a thing called when it's ready.
Cash out, ipapadara mo?
How long have you been making bagels? 18 years. Daniel's been rolling 18 years.
ilalabas.
May understanding the temperature in the air.
200 lang.
Understanding his machine, working out how long it should mix. All these things are such important.
Mahal, may ano ka dyan?
What happens?
Di ba yung winidraw mo, may 400 lang na
Once the
separate,
dough
di ba?
reaches the desired consistency, it's cut into sections and transferred over to the rolling table, where it's then
Bibigay mo
formed
to
into
sir.
the mold.
Number.
We can make up to 15,000
Ipo-forward mo,
bagels a
sir.
day. And this will make approximately 1,000 bagels.
They cover the entire thing with a plastic sheet to help soften the dough before rolling.
And it's only about a 5-minute process that allows that dough to connect a little better with each other. They're saying hello, how are you? All those ingredients are basically doing that right now.
At any given point, there are 4 expert rollers on hand. These skilled men have between 15 and 27 years of experience perfecting the craft. Something Scott says is a dying breed.
There's not a school of rolling bagels out there right now, and these people are experts at that field. Listen, I think Derek Jeter said it best. If you put 10,000 hours into something, you're a professional. And Daniel has definitely put 10,000 hours into it.
It takes an hour to an hour and a half for these hand rollers to individually slice, roll, and twist about 1,000 bagels.
It takes a certain type of character because it's very tedious. You're cutting the same thing over and over. And I can tell who is rolling what bagel by the way they lock their bagel and form it together. Daniel has that little lip here that I noticed about Daniel's rolling because you don't go to Daniel's bagels. And it gives each bagel their own personality. Our bagels are like snowflakes. Everyone is individually different, and that's what makes it special.
Once the bagels are rolled, they're placed on this rack, covered with plastic and left to cool for a half hour. They then move into one of 3 fridges to ferment for at least 24 hours.
What we're going to do now is open these bagels up because we still have to reduce the heat.
Ay, siguro po yan yung
To stop the rise of
kabataan
these
mo nag-aaral
bagels.
sa elementary, grabe
We
yung
intend to stop
ano ba yun,
the
no?
movement
Ang
with a lot of
pagbabantag sa'yo ng mga
ways.
classmates
And
ko.
expand
Doktor.
the
Ah, yeah.
are bigger. There's a
Ano ko yan? Sa
misconception
apelido.
that bigger bagels are better, and they're not by far. As you see, each rack has a
Sabi kayong kaysa iba yung mga apelido mga medyo may pagkabastos.
10,000
Iba ba ganyan?
bagels right before your eyes.
Mahilig yung mga bata.
And this is only
Kaya ano
one
ba guys,
fridge
ganyan,
that
ganyan
we
kanto
keep the
ng
bagels.
apelido.
Here's my second fridge. Again, you have racks of bagels, 1,
Ayos
2,
yung
3,
kayo,
4. We have close to 70,000 more bagels.
Iya,
This is
thank you,
basically
sir.
what we keep.
Salamat po, 110 po yun para
Making of the bagels. Now it's time for fun and games. We're gonna start
Salamat po,
with
sir.
bagels.
May ano na kami, igding.
We'll always have
mga
2
inuman,
people
may
working in the oven. So there's a kettle man, which we'll call. So he'll control the flow of the bagels. And there's the guy on the oven that'll be his
Dahil sa
director.
rong ano
But
flavor?
the kettle is the ultimate guy in control.
Iya.
Because he knows when that bagel's ready to come out of that
Gusto
kettle.
ko frozen, sabihin mo lang. Frozen.
Bagels
Frozen.
have been bottled,
Frozen, eh?
they're scooped over to bowls that have been pre-seasoned with their flavor, such as coffee, sesame, or the very popular
Ano ang titingin mo? Saraduhan mo yun. Yung bukas ka ng bukas. Saraduhan mo muna. Hindi.
Nakain naman na ganyan.
Basta yung play ng tayo.
Sige.
May islaw. Pwede may islaw. Pwede na magluto.
Hindi man siguro ito ako. Ayan! Ayan! I want you!
Pwede may prosa ba yan naman sa inumin yan? Lamig na naman yan?
Yes! Nag-quiz na tayo kahapon na.
You can choose pre-built layouts for anything or build your own workflow.
Kuwat kita din! Malakas!
Choose the colors you need. You can move the filter by
Ah, magbabay ka na.
Bye. Thank you for watching po. God bless po. Salamat po.
Dito ako.
Dito makain.
That's an update.
Dito ako.
There you go.